Hi, it's Professor House. Today I'm going to show you how to factor by using the AC method, the trinomial 15x squared minus 2x minus 8. Now, if you recall from the first video on this, and if you haven't watched the first video on how to factor by the AC method, you should do that before you do this one. But if you recall, a trinomial is a three-term polynomial where the leading coefficient is named A and the constant is named C. And that's why this is called the AC method. Because in order to factor this, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply A times C. So for us, that's 15 times a minus 8, which is a negative 120. And that sign is very important. We have to watch our signs carefully in this process. Now we're looking for the factors of negative 120 that will combine to add to negative 2. So we've got numbers that multiply for negative 120 that combine or add to negative 2. So you have to think a little bit about this because the factors of 120 are abundant. There are a lot of factors of 120. Now, you also need to know that in order to multiply and get a negative, one has to be positive and one has to be negative, and which one you choose to be the negative and the positive is important. So after carefully analyzing this, I know that my answer to this is going to be a positive 10 and a negative 12. Now, it may take you a while to figure this out, especially if you're not really great at multiplication tables. But if you have to use a calculator or whatever, you need to figure out what two numbers multiply for negative 120 that add to negative 2, and verify that on your calculator to make sure that you have the right answer. So I learned that they are 10 and negative 12. Now, the 12 has to be the negative, because if we make 10 the negative, then it would add up to positive 2, and we needed to add to negative 2. So the process says, once you find the two factors that multiply for AC and add to B, that middle term coefficient, negative 2, then you split your middle term into those two terms. So 15x squared positive 10x minus 12x minus 8. So those are going to be my two terms that were the O and the I of the FOIL rule when the FOIL rule was applied to get this trinomial in the first place. So once I do that, I'm going to group these two and these two. And here's a perfect example of why putting in parentheses can be dangerous, because if you put parentheses here behind this minus, you've got to remember to change the sign of this. So my recommendation is just think, mark them if you need to, like I've done, or just think I'm going to do the first two greatest common factor and the second two greatest common factor. So I look at the first two terms, they're both positive. So my greatest common factor is going to be a 5x, and that's going to leave me with a 3x plus 2. Now, no matter what I do, the next thing I need to do is drop this sign down. It has to come down. That's the sign between your greatest common factor factorizations. Then you look at 12 and 8, and you see that they have a 4 in common. Now be careful. That's technically now a negative or a minus 4. So we're going to need a 3x and a plus 2. Like we said, if you put those parentheses following a negative, it's going to change that sign in the parentheses. Now, if you found the right factors that multiply for AC and add to B, you automatically will have a match. And that can also help you catch this sign. These two have to match as long as you've done this part right. So my common factor that I see now is 3x plus 2, and then 5x minus 4 is what is left over. So that would be the factorization, okay, of changing 15x squared minus 2x minus 8 into two factors that are being multiplied, 3x plus 2 and 5x minus 4. Now, it would be silly not to check this because it's not hard to check. You do the full rule and check it to make sure that when you multiply it, you get your original trinomial. Okay, so let's just quickly check it before we declare this the answer. So f of the full rule is 15x squared. O of the full rule would be negative 12x. The I of the full rule would be a positive 10x. And the 2 times the negative 4, or the L, would be minus 8. And there's your negative 12 and your 10x, or your 10, just like we have here. These two might be in a different order, but they have to match these two factors that you selected up here. We combine them, 15x squared minus 2x minus 8, and that is the original trinomial we had. Therefore, we know that this is the correct factorization of 15x squared minus 2x minus 8.